Day 1 of a 4-day trip. It took over 2 hours before the first light of morning became present in vivid oranges, pinks, and purples. Over the eastern horizon of the Mojave Desert, these colors combine to rip through the darkness. We had set out at 4:30 in the morning to put a good chunk of interstate pavement behind us, and were well on our way to beautiful and desolate 2-lane highways by the time the sun was fully out. Before eventually getting all the way to Leslie Gulch in southeastern Oregon, we were headed to Reno, Nevada to visit my mother and pick her up for some holiday fun. Over the years, Nina and I have exhausted just about every little detour up to Reno from Los Angeles, but this somewhat new route today would swing well into central Nevada and add a good 4 hours to the direct route up 395 along the eastern Sierras. In addition to some new views, I would also be able to visit one new California post office near Death Valley and 4 in remote places in Nevada. Leaving Interstate 15 behind in Baker, we head up the stunning California Route 127 through Tecopa, Shoshone, and Death Valley Junction before crossing over into the Silver State. We always have good luck with Hertz, and this time was no different. Instead of the quote Nissan Rogue or similar in the small SUV category, we were given this completely souped up 4-wheel drive Subaru Outback and loved every minute with it on the trip. Every single kilometer of Nevada State Route 376 was stunning, from its southern terminus at US 6 all the way until it ends at US 50 to the north. Although never taking it in one go, we had been on various sections of US Route 50 in Nevada before, a road simultaneously called the Lincoln Highway and the loneliest road in America. On either side of Austin, it is not hard to see how it gained this second name. On day 2, we once again get an early start to put the interstate miles behind us in the dark. Dawn treats us to cotton candy skies as we approach Winnemucca, where we will say goodbye to I-80 and get back on 2-lane highways and eventually gravel and dirt roads.
In the Black Rock Desert, highway to the sea.
But first, we give Winnemucca a little look over and end up at the griddle for a hearty breakfast.
I'm so excited
For what?
for my eggs Benedict. Juice and coffee.
Have fun. Soon after entering Oregon, the snow-covered Steens mountain range comes into focus just as we cross into mountain time. With the Alvord Desert in the foreground, the Grand Mountains are hard to take your eyes off of.
Those are the
Steens.
mountains.
Ready?
Like nearby Boise, Idaho, southeastern Oregon has a recent history intertwined with Basque settlers, many of whom were shepherds. Nowadays, formerly majority Basque communities like Iraq have shifted mostly to cattle ranching, but the roots are strong. The tiny hamlet also happens to have the kind of post office I love to come across, a cute rural station that serves the needs of the community and has a postmaster that is happy to talk about the area. Shortly after Jordan Valley, a place where you are more likely than not to smell a truckload of cattle headed to slaughter, the Sucker Creek Road turnoff is just before the Idaho border. We live in a time where you already kind of have an idea what the place you are traveling to will look like. Because of this, the 27 kilometers or so of dirt and gravel to get to the start of Leslie Gulch is as if anticipation was repeatedly slapping you in the face. These lands are obviously beautiful, especially the distant views of Sucker Creek State Natural Area, but enough is enough, let us in already. Leslie Gulch is on BLM lands and therefore pretty modest all around from an infrastructure standpoint. The entrance sign introduces the namesake settler as a pioneer, gag, who thankfully Mother Earth had different plans for by striking and killing him with lightning. Indigenous Paiute peoples were living along and using the Owyhee River long before any ships landed on the east coast from Europe, but good luck finding them in the whitewashed origin stories. Once you begin your descent from the entrance sign down to what is now the Owyhee Reservoir after damming flooded the river basin, the breath seems to be ripped out of your lungs. These natural volcanic ash formations have been continuously eroded, creating a spectacular cathedral today that snakes its way all the way down to that water. In late December, we only passed one vehicle in the entirety of our trip down to the end of Leslie Gulch and back. That red pickup was empty, its driver apparently on a hike, leaving the entire park to us and the hawks catching the thermal lifts of these steep cliffs. At the campsite that lives at the end of the road, we got out to stretch our legs, have a drink, and eat the sandwiches we had picked up at a coffee shop earlier in the day. We were only halfway through our time in Leslie Gulch, but this little pit stop was important because we had some real rough terrain coming up when we got out.
Delicious.
The 13-kilometer trip back to the top of the gulch is just as beautiful, with a different set of shadows now that the sun is getting lower in the mid-afternoon sky. We have joked about wanting a drone before, but it is this trip through Leslie Gulch that really makes us sad not to be able to fly one and get different footage from above. Back on Sucker Creek Road, we passed numerous ranches as well as plenty of cattle and a few horses.
What a girl.
Sucker Creek State Natural Area is an Oregon state park with roads maintained by BLM and equally abandoned in late December. After getting spoiled by all the gravel on Leslie Gulch's roads, this park starts to scare us. Recent heavy rains have left Sucker Creek Road fabulously waterlogged, and we have to cautiously pass through a couple dozen puddles of unknown depth that almost completely overwhelm the poor road. The late afternoon has become completely overcast, a little drizzly, and as darkness is setting in, there is at least 30 minutes of nerve-wracking overlanding in our trusty Outback. Getting cell service, as we got within a couple kilometers of Oregon Route 201 south of Adrian just before sunset, is met with 3 happy exhales. We wouldn't have to spend the night in the Subaru. Instead, I fit in a couple very dark post offices and we make our way to Ontario to enjoy some Oregon wines and finger steaks, a beloved favorite from just over the border in Idaho.
I was like, what is it?
Day 3 was forecasted to be rainy and did not disappoint. A few morning hours gift us fairly good conditions to see the calendar-worthy post office in Westfall and enjoy the beautiful scenery along US Route 20 as it follows the Malheur River Valley. Eventually, though, we spend the rest of our day with our wipers running non-stop. The good news? That thick coat of mud from yesterday that had decorated the car was now washed completely away. Besides the very spread out rural post offices of southeastern Oregon, our main stop for the day is the Pete French Round Barn, which is a protected historical site and since 1995 has been run by Oregon State Parks. After running from the car in the parking lot to the barn to avoid the rain and wind, it was nice to get cover. Thankfully, this sightseeing stop has a roof and seems to be designed in a way that keeps the cold, gusty winter air from circulating within its walls. Avoiding the rain, we skipped the visitors center on our way in and were not expecting to find that the barn has a tenant already. The beautiful owl who sat at the roof's peak called out as if to say hello, unfortunately not when I had the video rolling. Once he had my attention, I guess another call felt unnecessary for him. The barn was designed in this circular manner so that wild horses could be taught to pull long wagon trains full of wool in the outer portion of the structure. For most of the rest of the day, the rain is relentless and follows us from Oregon back to Nevada. Any thoughts of stopping at Paradise Valley to see its cute post office and possibly call into the saloon will have to be pushed to another trip. When the rain finally does break, we are already back on the interstate and headed west to Reno. Pizzas are awaiting our return, so we only stop for gas, the bathroom, and yes, this lovely New Deal era post office in Lovelock. Yesterday, the Northern Sierras had a pretty significant storm, so on day 4 we are avoiding those possibly iffy mountain road conditions. After saying goodbye to Mom, who was a wonderful addition to our road trip, we are off on some more beautiful high desert Nevada highways. I had recently been thinking of the Walker River Reservation and Walker Lake, so this was the perfect opportunity to travel the section of US Route 95 that cuts through both. New to us today were a cutback over to California on Nevada State Route 360 and a brief section of US Route 6 over to the border to Benton, and then eventually rejoining US Route 395 in Bishop and onward to Los Angeles. Some of those same colors that greeted us at first light on day 1 were again in the California sky to say goodnight to our trip on day 4.